All right, so we're going to go ahead and add our bolt logic to this door that we made. But before we get started with that, I noticed I should probably parent the door to the door frame. And I'm going to give this a little bit different of a name. It is pretty accurate to call it the door frame, but eventually I'm going to make this like a prefab. And so I wouldn't want to call it a door frame. It just seems easier to call it a door. And I'm going to call it a portcullis door to indicate that it's the kind of door that's going to go up. Well, this will go up as opposed to swinging open or something. We'll make like a swinging door later. So to get started with Bolt, we want to add a component to this parent door object here. And we're going to add something called a state machine. Makes sense. This is something that wouldn't show up if you didn't have Bolt added to your project and installed like we went through earlier. And now that I have the state machine here, we need to open the graph window and create a new macro. So there's two ways you can create Bolt has two things. There's a state machine and a flow machine. And the state machine is for handling the relationships between states and the transitions from one state to the other, and then the flow machine handles the logic within the states. So either way, you could skip the state machine and just add a flow machine to any game object if you wanted, but with a state machine or a flow machine, you have to decide whether you want to have an embedded flowchart or a macro flowchart. And basically, macro should be your default go-to. And the main difference is that you can reuse the macro for other game objects. So it's kind of more versatile, I guess. So we'll leave that on macro, and we have to make one. So since you could reuse this, if we had one existing, we could drag it in and we could just, boom, we'd have this thing working based on whatever logic was in it. We don't have that. So we need to make one, and a macro is going to be a new category of asset. So to follow our Unity organization pattern here, we will go ahead and make a folder called macros, and I guess I'll just call this thing door. I guess I can call it a door macro. I don't know. I am still getting used to Bolt. I haven't decided what naming conventions I like yet, but this will work for now. And so now that we have this macro created, we can hit edit graph, and it's going to open this state graph window. And I'm going to dock this thing down at the bottom of my screen here. And so you can see we sort of have the start of our flowchart, and there's one more window we're gonna need access to use Bolt. So we're gonna go to this. Well, actually, there's two more, but the first one we need to deal with is going to be called the. Let's see. I gotta remember what this thing is called. The graph inspector. So go ahead and go to the window, graph inspector. So this is a curious problem. I am pretty confident that when I hit Graph Inspector, I should get a new window open, and I just don't see it. So I'm going to close Unity and reopen it and see if this gets resolved, but we'll find out. Yeah, sure enough, after I restarted Unity and I hit Window Graph Inspector, I actually got the Graph Inspector. So I don't know, hopefully you don't run into that bug. I have never run into it before, but if you do, I just saved and closed Unity and reopened, and then I tried it and it just worked. So best of luck. Anyway, I want to dock the graph inspector down here at the bottom, and you can see now I don't have any graph loaded. So let's go back to this portcullis door, and this is the object that had the state machine component added, and we have this door macro that we created. So now that I have something with the state machine selected, we can inspect it in the state graph window and the graph inspector. And I am going to change. So when you click on a unit or node, whatever you want to call this, you can give it a name, and I'm going to name this one closed. So the first initial state, that's this green one, is going to be closed. So when we start the game, the door is going to start off closed. And a door is pretty simple, so it only really is going to have two states, at least the simplest kind of door we can think of. And so I will make another state here by right-clicking and hitting Create Flow State. And this one, we will change the name of it so it's selected, and then in the Graph Inspector we can give it a name, and we'll call it Open. And if you were to right-click on it, you could change which one is the starting state, but we want Closed to be the starting state. And we need to make some transitions from closed to open. So if I right-click on closed and make a transition, then I can click on open, and now we have a way to go from closed to open. We'll still have to add logic to decide when that happens, but we're just creating the structure right now. And so likewise, I'm going to click on open, and I'm going to hit make transition and click on closed. And so now I have a way for once the door's open for it to close again. So that's kind of the basic structure of our state machine for something as simple as a door. Let's go ahead and see what kind of changes we have on GitHub. Just to be safe, let's go ahead and save our scene and save our project first. And let's make a commit here. You can see we have this new door macro asset, and we have it changed to our Unity scene. And then we have meta files and a meta file for the macros folder that I made. So let's just say we created a door macro with open and closed states. And we can commit that and push it, and then in the next video we'll work on setting up animations to correspond with these states.